The Italian Grand Prix is over and it was victory for Max Verstappen as McLaren made some questionable strategy choices. But now F1 is moving from Monza to Baku for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, which means that once again it is time for my preview and predictions. This is a series where I will be previewing and then at the end of the video giving out my early predictions. If you enjoyed the video then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. And when you've finished with that, please do check out Crash Happy, which you can find in the description below. We have released episode 2 of the podcast. Now though, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, so please do stick around for that. Yep, Monza is over, and next up is Baku and the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And Azerbaijan is another circuit where straight line performance is very important due to the length of the pit straight. But, unlike Monza, this circuit does feature a lot more corners, and a lot of 90-degree corners. This means that while straight line performance is important, the challenge is completely different to Monza. Baku features a lot of 90-degree corners and the infamous castle section. Not only that, but the walls are very close, and every year we do see some cars in the wall at the very least during practice, as was the case last year, and that is because there is very little margin for error. Based on history, this has typically been a very strong circuit for Charles Leclerc and also Oscar Piastri, so it will be interesting to see how they both get on this year. As you would expect, with the number of 90-degree corners, Baku is very much a rear limited circuit. The rear tyres do take an absolute beating. In terms of downforce, expect the teams to run with very low downforce once again. It will be more downforce than Monza, but overall, it's still quite low compared to what we usually see from the cars. It will be interesting to see how McLaren get on, as they typically have very low top speed, which could potentially leave them vulnerable, like it did at Monza, to the fastest cars. Tyre wear around the Baku circuit is historically very low, and that is down to the circuit surface being very smooth and not abrasive at all, and because of that, Pirelli has opted to go a step softer with the tyres this year for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, as they have gone with the softest tyres in the range, meaning that the hard tyre is a C4, the medium tyre is a C5, and the soft tyre will be the C6 tyre. This is to try and make the Azerbaijan Grand Prix a multi-stop race. We have seen the C6 be used at other races. Typically though, when the C6 is used, the C5 ends up being the better tyre in qualifying, and with the number of 90-degree corners, I anticipate that once again, the medium C5 tyre will actually be a better qualifying tyre than the C6 soft tyre. Last year, there was only 22 pit stops as the vast majority did one stop, but look at Ocon, Ricciardo and Gasly. They all did the entire Grand Prix on one set of C3 hard tyres. So Pirelli has opted to just get rid of the C3 and bring the softer tyres instead. Overtaking at Baku, despite the very long pit straight, is actually pretty difficult, and you can see this as last year there was 47 on-track overtakes. To help with overtaking, the Baku circuit features 2 DRS zones. The first DRS zone is down the pit straight heading to turn 1, and the second DRS zone is on the exit of turn 2, and on that straight down towards turn 3. Due to the length of the straights, we do tend to see the cars getting stuck in giant DRS trains, which isn't positive for overtaking. Last year, the pole position lap time was set by Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and Charles set a time of a 1:41.365. During that lap, Leclerc reached a top speed of 337 km per hour, which is approximately 209 miles per hour. In the Grand Prix itself, the race fastest lap was set by Lando Norris in the Mclaren, and Lando set a time of a 1:45.455. This year, I anticipate both laps will be beaten, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see those medium tyres being used in Q3 instead of the soft tyres. I shall say if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about Red Bull. For Red Bull then, it was victory for Max Verstappen, and Max did a wonderful job of making me look like a complete fool. I had written Max off, and then we get a dominant performance from him as he wins by the biggest margin of the season. Verstappen had a fantastic race, but teammate Yuki Tsunoda once again had a shocker of a result. But now Red Bull moves on to Baku, and Baku could be a bit more of a tricky race for them. Budapest and Monaco were two pretty bad races for them, and Baku is somewhat similar. That could mean that they have some worries, but Monza showed that they have really improved, at least with Max Verstappen, and because of that, I don't think Baku will be quite as bad as initially feared, but with that in mind, I don't think we will see a repeat performance in Baku of what we saw in Monza, but I do think a podium could be very well possible, especially if we do get to see some spice between the McLaren drivers. For Mercedes then, it looks like they could be back to square one on their quest of closing the gap to Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. After taking out Charles Leclerc at Zandvoort, Russell finished in 5th place at Monza, and Kimi Antonelli was in 9th place, and now Mercedes have dropped further behind Ferrari once again. Azerbaijan though could be a good weekend for the Silver Arrows. Think back to Budapest, and we saw a really strong performance from George Russell, all things considered, and it is entirely possible that we see something similar again from him. Russell is still having a fantastic season. Teammate Kimi Antonelli though had another difficult race with a 9th place finish, and now Antonelli has been overtaken by Alex Albon in the Williams in the driver's standings, which for Kimi Antonelli is frankly unacceptable. Baku could be very difficult for Kimi. It is a circuit where you need confidence in the car and confidence in yourself, and well, Kimi has been lacking a lot of confidence as of late due to a number of errors, and each and every single error seems to just be whittling away his confidence a little bit more. With that in mind, I do worry that we will see him in the wall at some point during the weekend. For Ferrari then, the Italian Grand Prix was an okay race for them all things considered, but they didn't manage to get onto the podium, despite having a car that was significantly faster than the McLarens in a straight line. Charles Leclerc tried and got close with a P4, but he just couldn't live with the top 3. Teammate Lewis Hamilton had a solid recovery drive all things considered as well after suffering a grid penalty. Baku should be happy hunting for Ferrari. As I said earlier, Monaco and Budapest are two circuits which have similar characteristics to Baku, and those are two circuits where Ferrari looked strong with Charles Leclerc. In Monaco, of course, Leclerc was on the podium, and in Budapest, Leclerc, okay, he was leading for quite a while and looked solid until Ferrari had to raise the ride height by adding more pressure to the tyres, which completely ruined his race. Not only that, but Charles Leclerc is incredibly quick over one lap here. Remember, he got pole position in 2021 despite the Ferrari being nowhere pretty much all season. In 2022, Leclerc was dominating until his power unit failed, and in the first stint in 2024, Leclerc was dominating as well. But even with this being a great track for him, he's actually still yet to win in F1 here. I can see him being a contender for pole position, but once again, I'm not sure if he will be able to get that elusive victory. And finally, for McLaren then, they were beaten at Monza due to being way too slow in a straight line, and overall they just couldn't live with Max Verstappen. Not only that, but we saw some wonky strategy calls by them, which created unnecessary drama with the call to swap the cars back after the pit stop blunder, which saw Lando Norris fall behind Oscar Piastri. Admittedly, that's more down to a slow stop, but even so, it does look a little bit silly for McLaren. Heading to Baku, it is a circuit where they won last year, but let's not forget last season they benefited from having a mini DRS rear wing, which helped them and will not be available to them this year. And with McLaren being pretty slow in general down the straights, I think they could be vulnerable yet again to Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, at least in qualifying. The circuit is filled with 90-degree corners as well, and McLaren's main strength is medium-speed corners, which is why they dominated in Zandvoort. So I can see this being a slightly tougher race for them yet again. Oscar Piastri, though, it has to be said, is very handy around this circuit, and he will need to use this to his advantage if he wants to open out the gap to Lando Norris in the Drivers' Championship. Oscar was forced to give the position back to Norris after the pit stop blunder, and honestly, I'm actually surprised Oscar Piastri did it. This is a championship fight between them, and I just couldn't imagine Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen doing this if their main rival in a World Championship battle was their teammate. Remember, Hamilton would never cede position to Nico Rosberg unless there wasn't really much worth fighting for, and Verstappen wouldn't even give up a P6 to help Sergio Perez in 2022. So I can't imagine them ever giving up a podium position to their teammates, even if they would still be on that podium. But with Lando Norris, it does have to be said, he was overall faster than Oscar Piastri at Monza. In Baku, if Norris can beat Oscar, then there will be a sense of hope that he can continue to close the gap in the Drivers' Championship, given Baku is a strong circuit for Piastri. So with that in mind then, what are my early predictions for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix? Well, in the midfield, I think the top midfield team and midfield driver will be Williams and Alex Albon, as I think this should be another circuit where they go pretty well. And for pole position, I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc to get pole. Yes, I'm fully on that Ferrari hopium once again. But what about the top 5? Well, just before we get to the top 5, I just want to say, if you haven't already, please check out the Crash Happy podcast. A link to it is in the description below, and for those who aren't aware, this is a podcast featuring myself, Mr. Pulse, Not Applicable aka James, Mr. V, Dan No Skill, and Formula Duck. It's not going to be all 5 of us every week, it is a bit of a rotation, and it is a lot of fun to make, so please do check it out and subscribe to the Crash Happy channel. Now though, what are my top 5 for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix? Well, in P5 I'm going to go for George Russell in the Mercedes, P4 will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, P3 will be Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, P2 will be Lando Norris in the McLaren, and yeah, I'm going to go for a Piastri Grand Prix win. But those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.